Hello students, welcome to week 2 for PRL300. This week we're looking at public relations models, and I wanted to take a second to highlight some important information from the course as well as some of the course content that will enhance your learning experiences this week. As we look through the week 2 agenda, it's important to realize that we're reading chapters 4 through 6 in the Satel text. You're also watching an intro to PR video that's 2 parts. It's intro to PR1 and intro to PR2. This is a lecture derived from Dr. Kim at Biola University, who's actually a colleague of mine, who I know very well. Her lecture covers and expands a lot of really solid information that you needed to know for last week and this week, so it's really important that you watch that. It's embedded into the time you need to spend within Blackboard this week, in addition to completing assignment number 2, your branding project outline, and discussion board number 2. Do remember that all discussion boards have 2 deadlines. The posts are due on Friday, and your replies to other students are due on Sundays. Discussion board 2 asks you to write approximately 400 words describing and sharing an example of the race system as noted in the chapter, as well as answering the question, why is it important in public relations, as well as providing examples of public relations deliverables, so campaigns, things like that, that would require effective specialized public relations writing. As you do this, make sure to incorporate terms and concepts from the weekly reading, as well as responding to at least 2 course mates' posts. Assignment 2 asks you to continue to work on your personal branding project. This personal branding project is due in week 3. We spent time in week 1 looking through some projects and seeing how they were developed and things of that nature. What you'll do in week 3, we'll spend more time on this next week, but you're going to create a Prezi, VoiceThread, screencast, or something that you post to YouTube that shares your personal brand. What I'm looking for this week in assignment number 2 is for you to create a 1 to 2 page outline of your branding project that includes a scripture or personal quote that represents you and your personal brand. As you complete the outline, ask yourself, if you were to turn your personality, who you are, everything that encompasses being you, into a brand, what would it be? And that's what we should get from your personal branding project. So this is a very personal assignment. We'll see photos and representations of things from your life, your family, hobbies you have, foods and things of that nature that you're into, maybe personal brands you like, if you personally wear a lot of Nike stuff, or you're very athletic, or you're musically inclined, or things like that. Whatever you put in your branding project is what I should get a strong sense, whoever watches it should get a strong sense of who you are and what your personal brand is. Utilizing a scripture or quote is oftentimes considered to be like a tagline, what national brands use, like the Nike Just Do It and things of that nature, that will help us explain and understand some of the personal characteristics of you. So this week we're doing the written outline, and then next week you'll be actually creating the presentation. Satel goes over the Satel text, the text you're reading, utilizes the RACE model very heavily, and that stands for Research, Action, Communication, and Evaluation. You'll see here on the screen that I actually have 2 models, and the reason for that is that while the RACE model is fine, and it's a reputable model for utilizing in public relations, meaning how you create your PR campaigns and part of that strategic communication process. PRSA, the national organization that oversees, that a lot of professional practitioners join, and it actually oversees the accreditation and PR process. So if you want to be accredited in public relations at some point, you'll go through PRSA. They actually utilize the RPI model, which is Research, Planning, Implementation, Evaluation. So every time I teach this course, I highlight both of them. They're both solid programs. I am more of a proponent for RPI. I will tell you I have a personal bias towards that, and that's because that's what the industry utilizes more regularly than the RACE model. However, for the sake of the course text and deliverables and things of that nature, it's important that we understand both of them. So both of them utilize research. Research in this sense deals with any secondary or primary information, so organic or secondary, something that already exists, that you can find that's related to the topic of what a potential campaign would be as you're planning in the strategic communication process. So you work for a company, they want to they want to build their brand and let the public know why they develop the best footballs for youth football programs. And so you're going to do research. You're going to look and see what's out there in the sports industry related to your topic. You're going to find everything that you need to about this, and each model utilizes that. Now, where RACE differs from planning is that after you gather your research, the RACE model immediately puts what you found into action. RPI takes some time to plan. So we got this information. Now we're going to plan. We're going to plan what we're going to do to let the world know why we have the best football for youths to play with. And you go from there. Race after that decides to, after they take their research and move to action, they go into communication. How are we going to communicate this? They start disseminating this across various mediums, social media, traditional media, print media, whatever that may be. The RPI at that point puts implementation in. So they decide how they're going to communicate it in their planning stage, and they're going to decide their action and their communication, and they fold that into one section called implementation. And then the last step in both models is evaluation. They go back and evaluate what they did to spread the word about why they have the best footballs out there, and they wanted to let their publics know about that to determine how effective their measures were in public relations. So evaluation, sometimes if you utilize it in a social media or digital media campaign, you look at impressions and hits and likes on various social media outlets, retweets, shares, stuff like that. And we'll get into more of that as we move on later on into the semester. It's important to know that as we go through this, the next thing we need to be aware of are publics and public relations. So what does public mean in the term public relations? Well, to begin with, a public is something a company must communicate with. And they communicate with different publics and not just the general public and not just themselves. So there's internal and external audiences. There are primary, secondary, and marginal publics or audiences. Those terms are interchangeable. And typically a public is just a group of people with a stake in an issue, organization, or idea. So what we mean by that is it's a group of people that have some value or relevance to an issue, organization, or idea. And so your primary audience or your primary public are those you particularly target all the time that are your goals. So if we go back to the football analogy and you're trying to spread the word about why you have the best youth football, your primary audience would be that of, we can brainstorm here, maybe youth football coaches, youths, parents, things of that nature. Secondary would be any of the people that you would target outside of the primary audience, and marginal are people that you don't always think about, that maybe aren't your targeted audiences or your secondary audiences, but maybe are influenced. So perhaps it could be baseball coaches, and they aren't normally who you would target, but then they had heard why this football is so great, so they told their friend who coaches football, something like that. Traditional and future audiences are those that are your traditional or your standard audience or public that you would expect to work with, and a future audience is those that are not yet an audience that you communicate towards but will later on in the future. Proponents, unproponents, and uncommitted are just that. Proponents are those that are for your brand. Opponents that are those that are not for your brand. You typically do not waver from those two categories. And uncommitted are those that haven't decided how they feel about your brand. So as you create strategic communication plans and you work in public relations, on point 4, you target the uncommitted, those that haven't adopted an idea or an opinion of your brand. In point 3, you target traditional and future. Why? Because the traditional are those that you are targeting communication for at this point. Future are those that will have a stake at some point. In point 2, you target your primary and develop communication for the secondary. Marginal are those that we don't necessarily plan for closely, but we have an idea of, and we know that we may be loosely connected to them in some way. Point 1, internal and external publics are those that internal are those that are on the inside of the company that have an inside perspective, and external are those that are on the outside of the company. So as we move through the week, this week, it's important to know that chapters 4 through 6 provide a lot of valuable information. Watching the YouTube videos posted by my colleague, Dr. Kim, will help you further understand the course reading. In addition, you need to complete assignment 2, your branding project outline by Sunday, and your original post for your discussion board number 2 by Friday, and your replies by Sunday. If you have any questions, let me know. I look forward to interacting with you this week, and I pray that you all have a good week.